When a locket is removed from the resting place of a disturbed man, he rises from his grave to retrieve that locket. I have lost count of the number of slasher movies I've seen. The slasher genre is full of film series that just seem to go on forever. There are multiple Nightmare on Elm Streets and Halloweens and Screams and Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Hatchets and Friday the 13th movies. Each have their own personality, and they all feature a bad guy who just appears to kill people and then he disappears again. But what happens when that bad guy isn't on screen? This was explored years ago in the clever mockumentary Behind the Mask, The Legend of Leslie Vernon, but it has never been done quite like it is done in A Violent Nature. This is definitely a horror film, but it isn't scary because the scares in horror movies come from not knowing where the killer is going to pop up next. The killer is in almost every frame of In a Violent Nature, so there isn't that uncertainty. Like most slasher movies, the human characters, they're all disposable. We probably learned some of their names, but it doesn't matter. They're just there to die. This is more of a thought experiment of a movie, and it truly flips that slasher genre on its head. We finally get to see what the killer does when he's not killing. Now, this isn't a spoiler, but the killer doesn't do much when he's not killing. Most of the time, we just follow him as he walks slowly through the woods aimlessly. Much of the movie felt like watching someone play a third-person video game, walking from task to task. In a Violent Nature is a pretty slow movie because there is so much in between time. When the movie started, I was sure I was going to hate it because it opens on the inside of a dilapidated structure and we hear characters talking, but we don't see those characters. The conversation ends and we are just staring at this rundown structure for several more seconds. It reminded me a bit of how the camera always hung way too long in Uncle Boone Me Who Can See His Past Lives, which is a movie I just didn't connect to at all. But I somehow couldn't take my eyes off of the screen in A Violent Nature. I read a review that referred to this as slasher ASMR, and that is a perfect description. There's no music, just the sounds of nature, trees blowing in the wind, birds chirping, grass brushing against a supernatural undead man's pants, and the blades and chains he carries clinking against each other as he rips through another helpless victim. You can't have movies like this without people dying. There is a very artsy shot when the first kill happens of the killer's hand slowly moving towards the victim, and then the camera flashes and we see that hand moving towards something else, but now it's covered in blood. It wasn't actually violent, it was kind of poetic, but from that point on the killings got more and more violent, with a couple of them immediately jumping into all-time iconic slasher movie kills. In a Violent Nature is more of a thought experiment than it is a movie. It is a story that is told from the killer's perspective. It is one of those movies where 90% of the runtime nothing happens, but it's somehow never boring. I 100% did not understand the ending and found it a bit anticlimactic, but I really enjoyed the journey. I don't think this is for everyone, but if you are a fan of slasher movies, this may be right up your alley. It isn't quite like anything else in the genre. Relaxing with a bit of yoga, run-down cabins, taking in some beautiful nature before killing a bunch of people, walking slowly towards a house,